The courtroom fell silent the moment the clerk called my name. For a second, I thought I had imagined it. My hands tightened around the faded blue folder resting on my lap, the same folder I had carried through 5 years of hearings, paperwork, sleepless nights, and impossible decisions. My daughter, Lily, sat beside my attorney in the front row with a coloring book balanced on her knees. She was only 5 years old, but she already understood that courtrooms were places where adults whispered and children stayed quiet. Across the aisle, my former husband leaned back in his chair with the same confident smile I remembered from the day he told me I had nothing. His mother sat beside him wearing an expensive cream-colored suit and pearl earrings. She looked around the courtroom as if she had already won. She caught my eye and smiled. Not a kind smile. The same smile she wore the morning she locked our front door behind me while I stood outside holding my 3-week-old baby. My name is Emily Carter. I am 34 years old. 5 years earlier, I believed that love meant sacrifice. That morning, I finally understood that justice often arrives long after hope disappears. But this story does not start here. Welcome back to Revenge Cold Stories. Drop your first name and your city in the comments and subscribe before we go any further. 5 years before that courtroom hearing, my life looked almost perfect from the outside. I worked as a senior financial analyst for a regional manufacturing company. My annual salary was $78,000. I had spent nearly 9 years building my career one promotion at a time. My husband, Daniel, owned a small construction business with 12 employees. Together, we earned enough to buy what we proudly called our forever home. It was a modest 2-story house with 4 bedrooms, a maple tree in the front yard, and a white wooden porch that creaked every autumn. We bought it for $426,000. I paid 40% of the down payment. Every month, half the mortgage came from my account. But whenever people congratulated us, Daniel always answered first. I bought this house for my family. At first, I ignored it. Then it became a habit. Eventually, it became history rewritten in front of me. His mother, Patricia, loved repeating it. My son works so hard. Emily is lucky to have a man who provides. I would smile politely instead of correcting her. Because correcting Patricia never ended well. She wasn't cruel in obvious ways. She preferred smaller cuts. The kind that left no visible scars. At family dinners, she complimented other women for their cooking before asking if I had finally learned to make roast chicken correctly. When I received a promotion, she said money wasn't everything. When Daniel worked overtime, she called him a hero. When I worked overtime, she asked whether my family was becoming less important than my career. None of those comments sounded terrible alone. Together, they slowly convinced everyone that I contributed less than I actually did. Even Daniel. Looking back, I realize beliefs rarely change overnight. They change one repeated sentence at a time. The first warning came 2 years into our marriage. I found mortgage documents lying open on Daniel's desk. There was paperwork I didn't recognize. When I asked about it, he closed the folder immediately. Business paperwork. Why is our address on it? It's nothing. I wanted to believe him. Love often sounds like trust. Sometimes it sounds like silence. When I became pregnant, everything shifted. Morning sickness lasted almost 4 months. I still worked full-time. I attended every doctor's appointment. I prepared the nursery. Daniel seemed excited. He painted the walls pale yellow himself. He assembled the crib while playing old rock music. Those moments felt genuine. That's what made everything harder later. Because people are rarely only one thing. Daniel loved becoming a father. He also loved control. Those 2 truths existed together. Patricia visited almost every weekend during my pregnancy. She constantly reminded me that Barbies needed their father's family more than anyone else. Our family always sticks together. She emphasized our. Never yours. At the time, I thought she was simply excited. Now I know she was establishing territory. The final month of pregnancy was difficult. My blood pressure climbed unexpectedly. The doctor ordered bed rest. I had to begin maternity leave earlier than planned. My income temporarily dropped because part of the leave wasn't fully paid. Daniel started making strange comments. "I guess I'm carrying the family now." I laughed. "I've paid half the bills for years." "I know." But something in his voice sounded different. As though keeping score had become important. Lily was born on a rainy Thursday morning. 7 pounds. 3 ounces. Healthy. Perfect. Daniel cried when he held her. He kissed my forehead. He promised we'd always protect her. For 3 weeks I believed him. Recovery after childbirth was harder than I expected. I barely slept. I cried over commercials. I forgot conversations. The doctor assured me those emotions were normal. What wasn't normal was how often Patricia appeared without calling first. She criticized how I held Lily, how I fed her, how often I rested. She rearranged my kitchen because she claimed her system worked better. Daniel rarely defended me. Instead, he would say, "She's only trying to help." One afternoon, I overheard them talking in the dining room. Patricia lowered her voice. "Emily isn't thinking clearly. New mothers become emotional." Daniel answered quietly, "I know." That sentence stayed with me. Not because of what he said. Because he didn't disagree. A week later, I received an email from the bank requesting confirmation of ownership records. Ownership records. I clicked the message. An error page appeared. The link had expired. I forgot about it. 3 days later, everything collapsed. Daniel came home unusually early. Patricia walked in behind him. Neither smiled. Daniel sat across from me. "We need to talk." No marriage survives those 4 words unchanged. "What happened?" He folded his hands. "I think we need some space." I laughed nervously. "Space, we have a newborn. You should stay somewhere else for a while." I stared at him. "What?" Patricia crossed her arms. "This environment isn't healthy." I looked from one face to the other. "Are you serious?" Daniel stood. "This house belongs to my mother now." I blinked. "What are you talking about?" "We transferred ownership months ago." "Months?" I searched my memory. Business paperwork. The folder. The strange mortgage documents. "No, it's legal. It can't be." Patricia walked toward the cabinet and removed a file. She placed a deed on the table. Her name appeared where mine should have been. I felt the room spinning. "How?" Daniel avoided my eyes. "You signed the refinancing package." "I never." Then I remembered. During my 7th month of pregnancy. Stacks of documents. Daniel saying they were routine mortgage papers. I had signed nearly 30 pages while exhausted after a medical appointment. He had slipped something else inside them. My breathing became shallow. "You tricked me." I simplified the process. "You lied." His shoulders barely moved. "It doesn't matter now." "It matters to me." Patricia picked up Lily's diaper bag and placed it near the front door. "I think it's best if you leave peacefully." I looked at my baby sleeping in her bassinet. "This is my home." "No," Patricia answered calmly. "It isn't anymore." I waited for Daniel to stop this. To tell his mother she had gone too far. Instead, he walked to the closet and brought out one suitcase. He had already packed it. That meant this conversation had been planned. Not today. Long before today. He looked directly at me. "You'll never survive without me." Then he laughed. Not loudly. Just enough to tell me he believed it. I carried Lily out of that house wrapped in a pink blanket. It was 43 degrees outside. Everything I truly owned fit into one suitcase. As I reached the sidewalk, I turned around one last time. Daniel closed the front door without saying goodbye. The porch light switched off. And for the first time since becoming a mother, I realized I wasn't crying because my marriage had ended. I was crying because someone I trusted had quietly erased me from my own life. The first night after we were forced out, I slept in a small guest room at my older sister Rachel's apartment. Calling it a guest room was generous. It had enough space for a single bed, a folding chair, and Lily's portable bassinet. Every time I turned over, my elbow brushed the wall. Yet I have never felt more grateful for 4 plain walls. Rachel never asked questions that first evening. She simply opened the door, saw the baby in my arms and the suitcase beside me, and hugged me before saying a single word. "You and Lily are staying here." Those 6 words felt safer than the vows Daniel had made on our wedding day. Around 2 in the morning, Lily woke up crying. I fed her while staring out the tiny bedroom window. The city looked exactly the same as it always had. Traffic lights changed. Street lamps glowed. A bus stopped across the road. It amazed me that the world could continue so normally, while mine had disappeared. At 6:30 my phone buzzed. It was Daniel. For one impossible second, I believed he was calling to apologize. Instead, his message read, "Don't come back to the house. Mom changed the locks yesterday." Yesterday. That meant the locks had been changed before I even knew I was leaving. The decision had never been part of an argument. It had been a plan. I didn't answer. An hour later, another message appeared. "I'll send someone for the rest of your things." Not our things. Your things. As though 11 years together could be divided into boxes. Rachel read the messages over my shoulder. She didn't curse. She simply said, "Save every single one." That became the first piece of advice that changed my future. Over the next 3 weeks, I stopped deleting anything. Every text, every email, every voicemail, every bank notification. I organized them by date inside digital folders. At the time, I wasn't thinking about court. I was trying to make sense of what had happened. But facts have a strange way of becoming evidence. My maternity leave ended 4 months later. Returning to work terrified me. I hadn't slept through a single night since Lily was born. Some mornings I cried in the parking garage before walking into the office. I thought everyone would see a broken woman. Instead, my manager, Mr. Howard, called me into his office. "We've been worried about you." I apologized for looking exhausted. He shook his head. "You've never missed a deadline in 9 years. If you need flexibility, we'll figure it out." That sentence almost broke me. Because it was the first time in months someone had treated me as a person instead of a problem. For the next year, I worked 4 days in the office and 1 day remotely. My salary stayed the same. I slowly rebuilt my confidence. Not dramatically. Quietly. 1 spreadsheet. 1 meeting. 1 successful project at a time. Meanwhile, Daniel seemed convinced my life was collapsing. Mutual friends occasionally repeated things he had said. "Emily won't manage long. She'll probably ask to come back. Single parenting is harder than she thinks." I never responded. There is a strange freedom in refusing to defend yourself against predictions that eventually become false. Lily celebrated her first birthday in Rachel's apartment. The cake came from a grocery store. The decorations cost $23. Only 8 people attended. Yet every photograph from that day contains genuine smiles. No one was pretending. No one was competing. No one was keeping score. A month later, I finally met with an attorney. His name was Michael Jensen. Grey hair, soft voice, 40 years of property law. He spent almost 2 hours reading every document I had brought. Finally, he looked up. "Emily, Yes. Did you knowingly sign a deed transferring ownership? No. Were you told what you were signing? I was told they were refinancing papers. He nodded slowly. That's important. He explained something I had never considered. Fraud isn't always about forged signatures. Sometimes it's about deception. Sometimes consent isn't real because the person signing was intentionally misled. It wasn't a guarantee, but it was enough to continue investigating. For nearly 18 months, Michael requested records from banks, title companies, mortgage offices, and county archives. Some requests came back empty. Others revealed tiny inconsistencies. Wrong document dates. Missing disclosures. Unusual filing timelines. Each discovery by itself seemed insignificant. Together they formed a pattern. A pattern Michael refused to discuss until he was certain. I don't build cases on hope, he often said. I build them on documents. Life slowly improved. I rented a small townhouse with 2 bedrooms. It wasn't fancy. The kitchen cabinets were outdated. The backyard was barely large enough for a swing. But the lease carried only one name. Mine. The first night there, Lily ran from room to room laughing. Mama. What? Is this our house? I smiled. It's our home. Children notice ownership differently than adults. Adults think about legal papers. Children think about whether they feel safe enough to fall asleep. One rainy evening when Lily was almost 3, she asked a question I wasn't prepared for. Why doesn't Daddy live with us? I stopped washing dishes. How do you explain betrayal to someone who still believes every story ends happily? I dried my hands. Daddy loves you. She nodded. But why not you? Children often ask the hardest questions with the simplest words. I chose mine carefully. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that hurt other people. Did you hurt Daddy? No. Then why? I kissed her forehead. I don't know. It was the truest answer I had. Because even after everything, I couldn't fully understand how someone who once promised forever had planned my removal from our home before our daughter was a month old. Around that time, Daniel's construction company began struggling. The housing market slowed. 3 major contracts were cancelled. Several employees left. According to mutual acquaintances, Patricia insisted everything was temporary. She had always believed confidence could replace preparation. Daniel believed her. They refinanced equipment. Borrowed more money. Expanded anyway. On paper they looked successful. In reality, they were trying to outrun numbers. I knew none of this officially. Michael warned me never to rely on gossip. We only use facts. So I focused on my own life. By Lily's 4th birthday, I had earned another promotion. My salary crossed $104,000. I finished paying off every dollar of personal debt left from the divorce. I even started a college savings account for Lily. Not because I suddenly became wealthy. Because stability grows from consistent decisions, not dramatic ones. Then, almost 5 years after I walked away carrying one suitcase and a newborn, Michael called. His voice sounded different. Excited. Emily. What's wrong? Nothing. He paused. We finally received the last file. I gripped the phone tighter. What does it say? I'd rather tell you in person. My stomach tightened. Is it bad? No. Another pause. It's better than I expected. The next morning I sat across from him in his office. A thick binder rested on his desk. He turned several pages before sliding one document toward me. At first I didn't understand what I was seeing. Then I noticed the dates. The signatures. The filing numbers. Michael folded his hands. I believe your husband and his mother made one mistake. Only one. They became overconfident. He pointed to a notarized document. This paper was executed on a day when Daniel was provably in another state. I stared at him. What does that mean? It means someone has serious explaining to do. For the first time in 5 years, I allowed myself to imagine something I had carefully avoided. Not revenge. Not humiliation. Justice. Quiet. Documented. Impossible to argue with. And somewhere across town, Daniel still believed he was walking toward an easy victory. Michael closed the binder carefully, almost as if he were handling something fragile. In my experience, he said, people rarely destroy themselves with one big lie. They do it with 100 small ones that eventually stop matching. I looked at the stack of documents again. So, what happens now? Now we stop guessing. He slid another file across the desk. We let the court compare every statement Daniel has made over the last 5 years with every document he signed. I frowned. And if they don't match? They won't. His confidence wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. The kind that comes from reading thousands of pages instead of believing dramatic stories. For months afterward, our legal team prepared for trial. Every bank statement was organized. Every email was printed. Every text message was placed in chronological order. My old calendar entries were recovered from cloud backups. Even hospital records from Lily's birth became relevant. At first, I didn't understand why. Michael explained. The timeline matters. So much happened. Exactly. He pointed to the calendar. Truth usually survives because time is consistent, lies rarely are. That sentence stayed with me. The months leading to the hearing were strangely peaceful. Not because I expected to win. Because I finally understood that my responsibility wasn't to convince anyone. It was simply to tell the truth. Daniel, meanwhile, seemed more confident than ever. His attorney sent several settlement proposals. Each one required me to admit that the transfer of the house had been voluntary. Each one offered a small financial payment in exchange for ending the case permanently. Michael rejected every proposal without hesitation. One afternoon, he pushed the latest offer back across his desk. What do you think? I read the first page. The number looked tempting. More money than I had ever seen in one payment. It would erase my remaining mortgage. It would fund Lily's education. It would make life easier. I looked at him. Should I accept? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he asked a question. What are you actually trying to recover? My home. You can't recover 5 years. No, you can't recover your daughter's first steps in that house. I lowered my eyes. No, you can't recover the nights you cried believing no one would believe you. I shook my head. So if this isn't really about money. He let the sentence finish itself. I slowly pushed the papers back. I want the truth on record. Michael smiled slightly. Then we're making the right decision. A week before the hearing, Rachel came over for dinner. Lily was in kindergarten by then. She proudly showed Rachel a drawing of our little townhouse. 3 stick figures stood in front of it. One was me. One was Lily. The third was our golden retriever, Cooper, whom we had adopted 6 months earlier. There was no drawing of Daniel. Not out of anger. Simply because that was the family she knew every day. Rachel looked at the picture and quietly squeezed. 3 weeks later, the written judgment arrived. I wasn't at home when Michael called. I was sitting in the audience of Lily's kindergarten spring concert, trying to record a group of children who were singing completely different notes with absolute confidence. My phone vibrated. Michael Jensen. I let it ring. Nothing was more important than watching Lily search the crowd until she found me. The moment our eyes met, she smiled and waved with both hands. Then she forgot the next line of the song. I laughed quietly. 5 years earlier, I would have answered the phone immediately. Now I understood something different. Some moments never come back. Court rulings can wait 10 minutes. Childhood cannot. After the concert ended, I stepped outside and returned Michael's call. "Congratulations," he said. I leaned against a brick wall. "It's over. It's over." I closed my eyes. What did the judge decide? The court found that your consent to the property transfer was obtained through intentional deception. My knees felt weak. Michael continued. "The deed transferring your ownership interest has been declared invalid." I didn't speak. The judge also concluded that several material facts were intentionally concealed from you during the refinancing process. Cars passed on the street. Children laughed behind me. The ordinary sounds of life continued, while 5 years of uncertainty quietly disappeared. "Emily, I'm here. You won." I took a slow breath. "No." He sounded surprised. "What do you mean?" "I didn't win." "What happened?" The truth finally caught up. There was silence on the line. Then Michael laughed softly. "I suppose that's another way to describe it." The court ordered additional financial proceedings to determine the exact distribution of the property's value and related damages. The legal language filled nearly 60 pages. Most people would never read it. I read every word. Not because I enjoyed legal documents. Because every page corrected a piece of history that had been rewritten without my knowledge. The judgment never described me as helpless. It never described Daniel as powerful. It simply described facts. Sometimes facts are more satisfying than dramatic speeches. About a month later, Daniel requested a meeting through our attorneys. Michael left the decision entirely to me. "You don't have to go." "I know. If you do, I'll be there." After thinking about it for several days, I agreed. The meeting took place in a conference room instead of a courtroom. No audience. No judge. Just 4 people and a rectangular wooden table. Daniel looked older than I remembered. Not because of grey hair. Because certainty had disappeared from his face. He waited until our attorneys stepped outside to review paperwork. Then he spoke quietly. "I owe you an apology." I listened. I kept blaming my mother. He looked down at his hands. But every document had my signature. I said nothing. I told myself I was being practical. Another pause. "The truth is..." He looked at me for the first time. "I couldn't stand the idea that you didn't need me." Those words explained more than I had expected. Control often disguises itself as protection. Dependence can look like love until someone questions it. I thought if everything stayed in my name. He stopped and corrected himself. "It's all Mum's name. I'd always be the one making the decisions." I finally spoke. "You already were." His eyes lifted. "I trusted you." He nodded slowly. "I know." "No." I shook my head gently. "I don't think you do." He waited. "You didn't just take a house. You took the place where our daughter should have taken her first steps." His shoulders slumped. "You took every birthday morning she never had there. You took every Christmas we planned. You took memories." The room became quiet. No dramatic music. No shouting. Just 2 people sitting with consequences that could no longer be undone. "I can't fix that." "I know." He looked relieved and devastated at the same time. "I wanted you to forgive me." I answered honestly. "Forgiveness isn't something you ask for." He lowered his eyes. "It's something the other person chooses if they ever can." That was the last personal conversation we ever had. Over the following year, we developed something much smaller than friendship but much healthier than resentment. Respect. Limited. careful, focused entirely on Lily. He attended school events, parent-teacher conferences, dance recitals. He arrived on time. He left without arguments. For Lily's sake, that was enough. Patricia never apologized. According to mutual acquaintances, she insisted the court had misunderstood everything. Oddly enough, her opinion no longer mattered. Reality doesn't require unanimous agreement. Around the same time, my company announced an internal leadership opening. Vice President of Financial Operations. It would oversee 6 departments, 143 employees, and an annual operating budget exceeding $90 million. 5 years earlier, I would never have applied. I would have convinced myself I wasn't ready, that someone else was more qualified. But surviving what I survived changed something unexpected. It taught me that confidence doesn't come from never being underestimated. It comes from continuing anyway. After 3 rounds of interviews, I received the position. On my first day, the CEO introduced me to the executive team. Then he said something that reminded me how quietly life changes. We chose Emily because when every project became difficult, she became calmer. Not smarter. Not louder. Calmer. I thought back to the woman standing outside her own front door with a newborn baby and 1 suitcase. She would never have believed those words. That evening I picked Lily up from school. She climbed into the back seat. Mama. Yes. My teacher asked what you do. What did you tell her? She smiled proudly. I said you're the boss. I laughed. Not exactly. She thought for a moment. You're my boss. I suppose that's true. She reached forward and squeezed my shoulder. I'm proud of you. Children don't realize how powerful simple sentences can be. As we drove home, we passed neighborhoods filled with beautiful houses. For years I had imagined getting the old family home back would heal everything. It didn't, because healing had already happened long before the judgment. It happened the first time I paid rent by myself. The first time Lily called a new place home. The first promotion. The first peaceful night's sleep. The court didn't give me my life back. It officially recognized the life I had already rebuilt. Looking back now, I understand something I couldn't see while living through it. What happened to me was never just about one house. It was a system of small dismissals. A compliment that erased my contribution. A joke that questioned my abilities. A document presented without explanation. A decision made on my behalf instead of with me. None of those moments seemed large enough to destroy a marriage. Together, they created a pattern where one person's voice gradually disappeared. Systems like that don't collapse because of one dramatic confrontation. They collapse when the truth is carefully documented, patiently presented, and finally recognized by people willing to look at the evidence. If there's one thing I hope you remember from my story, it's this. Never confuse being quiet with being powerless. Some of the strongest people you'll ever meet don't raise their voices. They simply keep records. They keep their integrity. And when the time comes, they let the truth speak louder than anger ever could. Tell me in the comments, if you had been in my position, what would have been the hardest part to forgive, or would you have walked away forever? Subscribe and I'll see you in the next one.